According to reports in the Washington Post last night, President Trump has paused military support for Ukraine. The question is now, what is going to be Zelensky's follow-on actions to that? What is going to be the reaction from Moscow? Definitely what's going to be the action from the European Union, from NATO members in Europe. But I think the bigger question is going to be, what is President Trump going to do next? Because I think when you start to take a look at all of the factors that are flowing around here and where the arc of this whole story has been going, you're going to see, and I believe that Trump is on the verge of taking a very bold stance and taking action that will shock a great many people, but may be desperately needed. First of all, let's take a look at what actually happened. So Washington Post reported last night, and it broke a lot of news. I actually got a call from Fox News and went on the Laura Ingraham show right away to talk about some of the ramifications of this. At the time, it was just said, well, here's what some unnamed administration officials have been saying, et cetera. But then we start to find out that no, in fact, it has been frozen. Then the Washington Post this morning comes out and says Ukraine can survive without U.S. military aid for now, but the future is uncertain. And that is one of the big problems. This is a news story, by the way. This is not an opinion piece here, but the Post states as an evident fact that Ukraine can continue on to fight without American aid. This question was actually put to Zelensky on the Brett Baier show, I guess I think it was Friday, after the huge debacle in the Oval Office, and he was asked a question.
So the question today is, can Ukraine win this war or hold off Russia without continued U.S. support?
It will be difficult for us. That's why I'm here. That's why we speak about the future negotiations. It will be difficult without your support, but we can't lose our values, our people. We can't lose our freedom. So a lot of people, Russians came to our territory, you know it. Russians came to our houses, and everybody saw it, video, images, a lot of things. They killed so many people. Just to forget it, just to say that Putin is a great guy? No, without us.
See, here you have President Zelensky just saying, well, what, you just want us to forget our country was invaded, that this guy came in and killed all of our people and blew up our cities, in the form of a rhetorical statement. And of course, his obvious answer is no, we're not going to do that. But the question put to him was, can you keep fighting without U.S. support? He basically sidestepped the question and just kind of said, yeah, we can, because we can't stop. So he says, we just have to keep fighting. The Washington Post seems to echo that this morning. Yes, they can continue fighting, but then the future is uncertain. No, folks, it's not uncertain. And no, they cannot keep fighting without the United States. Zelensky seems to be the only one who doesn't understand that. I think Russian President Vladimir Putin understands it. And I know that Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron from France, they understand it because they have said so. They have said, we can provide a lot of help. We can provide some, peacekeeping troops if we can find a negotiated settlement. But even these so-called security guarantees have to have an American backstop. They have to have the U.S. continued support. And you now have the President of the United States very clearly signaling that's not where we're going. We're not doing that. That's not what we're interested in. And this is not subtle. This is not something you got to read between the lines to figure out what President Trump is really doing. He is emphatically saying these things as loud as anyone can hear. And so, too, is his vice president. In fact, just this morning, Vice President J.D. Vance was asked some follow-up questions about a lot of this fallout.
He wants the Ukrainians to come to the negotiating table. We want the Ukrainians to have a sovereign and an independent country. We think the Ukrainian troops have fought very bravely, but we're at a point here where neither Europe nor the United States nor the Ukrainians can continue this war indefinitely. So it's important that everybody come to the table, and the president is trying to send a very explicit message. The Ukrainians have got to come to the table and start negotiating with President Trump.
There is no scenario that President Trump is just going to continue the war, that he's just going to follow in any way, shape, or form what the previous administration has done. There's no chance that he's going to follow the lead of what the European leaders have said, but quite a few of them, much more than just UK and France. A lot of them say they want to continue on. They'll, for as long as it takes. UK keeps using that phrase. That's apparently not true. They will make money as long as they can. They will sell stuff as long as they can, but they're not going to fight, and they're certainly not going to help fight a war that can't be won. And of course, it's easy for Britain, it's easy for France, it's easy for Poland, a lot of people who want to provide stuff because none of their people are involved, and it's only Ukraine people who die. So they'll go as far as it goes with that. But everything hinges on, can the Ukrainian armed forces continue to survive? Because that's what some reason keeps getting short shrift here. Very few people that talk about this with enthusiasm on the Western side seem to go back and understand the consequences and the cost levied on the Ukrainian men. That's what gets ignored in all of this. They want to stay up here in the ethereal and the conceptual, and like Zelensky does. He's doing the same thing. We have our freedom here. We were invaded. This idea, this concept, we were the victims here. So we have to keep. It doesn't matter what you want to do. It matters what you can do and what you can't do. And what you can't do is just pretend like your men don't matter, or that they're robots without psychology, without heart, without emotions, without fears, without all those things, and as though that they aren't subject to the vagaries of war. And if let's just look at that for a second. Brett Baer specifically asked him, "Can you fight without the Americans?" Now the support has actually been paused. They hadn't stopped it yet. They're using that word pause, I think, for a very good reason, which you saw Vice President Vance say right there, was in order to bring it back to the negotiating table so that we can talk. That's where because he wants to end the war. He doesn't want to do what the Europeans do, which is, yeah, we'll just keep supplying you stuff and selling you stuff for as long as it takes to the last Ukrainian, etc. Trump says, no, I want to end the killing. He's the only guy talking about the Ukrainian people. And that's shameful for the majority of the West. It's shameful for those in the United States that are opposing the president and saying, no, you should just keep on supporting this, oblivious to the cost in blood and treasure, permanent loss to the Ukrainian people, something that'll never get back. But the president seems to be very sharply focused on that. But if you want to know some of the impact that this could have on the Ukrainian armed forces, consider what happened in Afghanistan. Now, that war had been going on for 20 years, and if the president, whoever was in office, if they just had continued the same thing before, we would still be there right now. It would be on a low burn, something we could handle. We had some number of troops, and we just keep on this, whatever, $4 to $5 billion per year, and just kind of kept it on low on the stove, on the back burner, and it could have just continued on. It would still be going on to this day. But it wouldn't have been accomplished anything, and the Afghan people would still be dying. Well, when that finally came to an end, and all the fiction of the previous years that they were, the Afghan National Security Forces were improving, they were taking the lead, they were having the confidence of their people and all the stuff, which was never true. It was never true. So when finally we said, okay, now it actually is over. We had the 2020 Doha Accords that President Trump signed, and then it was executed late by the Biden administration in 2021. That set the stage for the dissolution. Once the the Afghanistan armed forces recognized that all of this backstop that they had and this U.S. over their shoulders and the psychological support that they had from the U.S., once that left, they didn't just keep fighting on. They started making deals with the Taliban, and then they just surrendered, and then they just gave up. And if you think the Ukrainian armed forces are not subject to that same psychological pressure, then you don't know anything about the pressures of war. Just imagine, you've been fighting this war since 2014 with the American backing in one form or another, in 2022 with the express support, in large scale. And now all of a sudden it's coming to an end. You see the Russians are continuing to advance. You see the Russian industrial capacity continuing to enlarge. You see the number of Russian troops continue to grow. And now all of a sudden you don't even have the support of the United States. And so now then, most of the soldiers do, that the best that the Europeans can do is to give a small percentage of what would be necessary to have a shot at holding the lines. They haven't held the line since November of 2023. Do you understand that? Since November of 2023, Russia started on a slow grinding advance that continues to this day. So they have not stopped them with everything. You may remember that infamous $61 billion that the U.S. gave in early 2024. that they had been trying. They said this would make a difference. It literally made no difference at all. The European Union keeps saying all these packages has hit. It has no impact on the battlefield. They introduced Storm Shadow missiles. They introduced ATACMS long-range missiles. They introduced F-16. None of it made any difference. Russia continued to advance. Now, just imagine those soldiers who see with all of that stuff they did get, now all of a sudden it's going to be limited to only what the Europeans can have, and they know that that's a fraction of what they need. Do you think that they're just going to continue to say, we'll still fight every day and continue to be slowly ground until we're dead? There's some estimates are, I think the General Budanov from Ukraine has said that they could probably last 6 months without support. That implies that they would fight literally to the last man, and then all of a sudden there wouldn't be an army. But that's not how reality works. How it actually works is that at some point before that, before it gets down to a critical mass, the rest of them are going to say, I've seen everyone die here, and the war is already lost. Now the Americans aren't here. I mean, it's self-preservation that at some point these guys are going to say, screw this. I'm not going to literally commit suicide so that the loss is here instead of the loss is here. And it is going to be here. That is going to happen. So if this loss is coming, and it's going to be here, meaning that Russia will have whatever it chooses to fight for on the battlefield, whether you're dead or whether you're alive, it's going to go there. Then there will come a point, there will almost certainly come a point to where either enough troops have been killed to where they can't hold the continuity of the line and it breaks just by sheer size, or because they finally say, I've had enough. And then they just bolt and they leave and they abandon the battlefield. That's also one of those two things is going to happen. It's a virtual certainty. One of those two things will happen. And so for the Post to think, yes, well, they can go on for some time, ignores all of the human components in a war. It's not just about how many men you have, not just about how many machines, how much money you give, how much ammunition. Those are all elements of it. But at the core, it's about men. And all of the people seem to be ignoring the men except President Trump. So he's focused on that. So now then, continuing on with what Vice President Vance said there, he said, listen, what we're looking to do right now is get back to the table. Whatever is said in public is one thing, but they're still sharply focused on what's said behind the scenes.
I think the most important thing, a lot of people have made this about public statements. President Zelensky needs to say that he's committed to the peace, or President Zelensky needs to apologize to the president. The public stuff doesn't matter nearly as much as what are the Ukrainians doing to meaningfully engage on what a peaceful settlement would look like. We need the Ukrainians privately to come to us and say, this is what we need, this is what we want, this is how we're going to participate in the process to end this conflict. That is the most important thing, and that lack of private engagement is what is most concerning to us.
See, and that should be concerning to everyone. If you're for Ukraine, if you hate Russia, this should alarm you, because this is one of the things I've been harping on that unfortunately the Washington Post doesn't harp on, that at least Vice President Vance is trying to elevate, is that the Ukraine side with Zelensky doesn't have a plan. Now, he has some things, which I'm going to show you in a second, but they are so far detached from reality that they're not serious at all. There's no substance to it. What they don't do is they don't have what I've said before. They don't bring the spreadsheet and say, all right, here are the logistical capacities. Here are the number of troops we have. Here's our capacity. Here's the same categories on the Russian side. And what we want to do is X, Y, and Z based on these factors. And we think we can succeed based on this. And here's the objective we want. That should be elementary. That's second lieutenant stuff, just in the tactical situation. And you just apply that same mentality and that same thought process to the strategic side. You can't do strategy without doing exactly what I just told you. And yet the Ukraine side isn't. Or he's just detached from reality, which we'll get to in a second. But if anyone is confused on where President Trump stands on this is what he said on Friday after the big debacle.
I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death.
So Trump is emphatically telling anyone who will listen, and apparently that's behind the scenes just as much as it is in front of the camera. He doesn't want to fight a war. He recognizes the war can't be won. So he doesn't want any more Ukraine people to die for nothing. So he's telling Zelensky, he's telling Putin, he's telling Keir Starmer, he's telling Macron, he's telling everybody, all the American people, we're not going to support something that can't succeed. And then after he made that statement, you might think, okay, after the disaster, the humiliation, and the public spectacle that was Friday afternoon in the Oval Office, and then Trump's emphatic comments there, that maybe Zelensky would start to moderate his talk a little bit. But instead, last night, he says, actually, you know what? We're going to fight for a long time. Trump just tells you, I'm not interested in a long fight. And in response, he says, no, we're going to fight for a long, long time, to which President Trump last night said,
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
Gary, I forgot to ask you this, but Trump issued a Truth Social last night. If you can find that and throw it up there, because that's he referenced that statement there. Trump made some pretty strong statements that he's not going to support that. And he said, if that's actually what happened, they may find out they're just on their own. And of course, it wasn't long after that the Washington Post and I think Business Insider and Bloomberg maybe was reporting that, the supplies had been stopped. So all the stuff that had already been in the pipeline was apparently paused. So even that part's not going to be going forward. I think what President Trump is trying to do is to show Zelensky that, hey, by the way, if you think you can keep fighting without our stuff, but even what you thought was coming isn't. Yeah, this is what he said. Thanks, Gary. He said, this is the worst statement that could have been made by Zelensky, and America will not put up with it much longer. It is what I was saying. This guy doesn't want there to be peace as long as he has America's backing. Europe, in the meeting they had with Zelensky, stated flatly that they cannot do the job without the U.S. Probably not a great statement to have been made in terms of showing strength against Russia. What are they thinking? So you see that Trump is not playing games with this, and now he's showing with actions, this is what we're going to do. Now, again, if we're talking about someone rational, if you're talking about someone who's on the Ukraine leadership side, who is on the inferior side of this in the balance of power, you can have all the desires you want. You can be angry. You can think this is unjust, all you want. But in war, it matters about the balance of power. So you would think that even if he had to grit his teeth, that Zelensky would say, okay, well, I have to acknowledge these realities. But instead, last night, he publishes this tweet. And I want to highlight this because it's really important. Gary, if you can toss that up there. Zelensky remains detached from reality. And even though I said this is what he ought to do, he's not doing it. And instead, he's doing stuff like this. He writes that the absence of security guarantees for Ukraine 11 years ago allowed Russia to start with the occupation of Crimea and the war in the Donbass. Later, in the absence of security guarantees, allows Russia to launch a full-scale invasion. And now, due to a lack of clear security guarantees, Russia continues to fuel this war. The world sees this, and the world acknowledges this. No, I'll tell you what, the world doesn't see that. They see something very different, or at least those who are willing to look at the reality don't. Because every single thing you talk there didn't happen because of the absence of security guarantees. It happened because of the lack and the unwillingness of Zelensky to take offered diplomatic off-ramps that would have either prevented the war or that would have stopped the war where it was and preserved the lives of his people. And just imagine if what he said was accurate, there's this absence of security guarantees. So he wanted, if we had security guarantees, there would have been World War III already. Trump is emphatic that there is not going to be World War III on his charge, and certainly not on a case like this. He's not going to play there. And he's showing with actions he means what he says. But let me tell you another history lesson here, another thing. Let's don't stop just about 2022 or even the Crimea issue. Let's go back to 2015 and the Minsk agreements. Had Zelensky or his predecessor simply adopted and applied the Minsk agreements that they agreed to, which was to change their constitution to give limited autonomy and protection to the Russian population in the east of the country, the civil war would have ended. The militaries would have withdrawn from their forces, and there would never have been a war in 2022. It would have ended in 2015 or 2016. Zelensky, when he was elected in 2019, had a chance to implement it, and when his predecessors didn't, and he refused to do it. He ran on a peace platform promising to end the war. When he had the chance, he didn't do it. Strike number one. 2021, he had the deal that was offered by Putin. It wasn't as good as the Minsk deal, but it was a whole lot better than anything else because it would have only included autonomy, really the same thing as the Minsk agreements for Luhansk and Donetsk, 2 provinces. He refused to do that. Then, as a result of that, then Putin recognized the independence of Luhansk and Donetsk. And that set the stage for then what was going to be the war, which actually started 2 days later, because Ukraine wouldn't agree to the terms they had already agreed to, and because Russia said, you're bringing NATO right onto our border, right at the heart of, in planes that would focus right towards Moscow, and we will not tolerate that. We'll use military force. Zelensky knew it. He chose to ignore it, and then the war ended up coming. 2 months later, Istanbul, 2022, you know it well, he refused to take that diplomatic offer. 2023, despite sober military analysis saying that you don't have the balance of power to try and drive Russia out of your territory, he ignored that, tried to drive them to the Azov Sea, and broke his teeth on the first one. By any rational thought, then you say, okay, we have to make the best deal we could get now because the Russia's only going to get stronger. We're going to get weaker. It doesn't make any sense to keep fighting. He ignored that and kept fighting. Beginning in, I think it was November of 2023, Russia started an offensive. And they continued on. And then by June of 2024, Putin gave another offer for a peace deal, what we keep referring to as the June 14 lines. And those were now not 2 provinces, now it's 4 provinces. And now that it's not just that you can't have NATO, now it's also you have to have a reduced armed forces down to 85,000, I think is the number being kicked around here from the Russian side. So the terms keep getting worse. Now, a rational person would have said, okay, it's as bad as it's been. It keeps getting worse. Holy cow, I better stop now or there won't be a country left. He doesn't. He ignores that. He continues fighting. He continues losing. A rational person would look at the military balance and say, I haven't stopped the Russian in 12 full months. It's time to do something different. Instead, he continues on with the fiction that we're going to keep fighting for our freedom. And his people keep dying every single day. They lose territory every single day. All of these things are gone. And now here we are in February, now March of 2025. President Trump has put on the table an offer to end the war. And it's now, the terms that is now going to be available are worse than they were last June, but still better than they will be if Zelensky continues fighting and they suffer an outright military defeat. That's where we are right now. Trump is now going to be faced with the prospect of either going back on his word and to prevent Zelensky from falling quickly, to unpause the supplies and keep it going and encouraging Ukraine to do the same. But all that's going to do is perpetuate the war, which Trump said he's not interested in doing. It's going to continue the killing of the Ukrainian people, which Trump said he's not interested in seeing. So then he's going to be faced with the difficulty of saying, I gave you every chance in the world. I gave you the opportunities. I practically begged you to take this deal here, this minerals deal, which in some quarters was panned as something that is exploiting the territory of Ukraine, and certainly the U.S. would benefit from it. There's no question about that. But it also would tie U.S. into Ukraine's future and would provide, if not a security guarantee, it would certainly provide a deterrent from Russia to take any action, especially if they agreed to that ahead of time. Zelensky won't take that either because, and here's the reason I think, he knows that will lead to an end of war negotiation. And if that war ends now, then he has to face elections. And by all accounts, he would almost certainly lose. I would say he would definitely lose, because how can you run on a platform that's saying, I've been in charge of this war for it'd be a little over 3 years. And everything I tried to do militarily and diplomatically was catastrophic failure. All these promises I kept telling you, we're going to get back to the 1991 borders. We're going to drive Russia to the Azov Sea. We're going to stop their offensive. None of it proved true. And now somewhere north of 1 million of his people are dead and huge swaths of territory are gone. Who's going to vote for that guy? So Zelensky knows that, and he's not going to. So then we get back to Trump. What's he going to do next? What I hope that he does, and what I would certainly recommend, is that he says, I gave you guys every chance in the world. You didn't want to take it. You now own it. If you want to keep fighting with Europe, then good on you. I think it'd be a terrible idea. I wouldn't do it, but I'm not going to stop you from doing so. But you will do it without American weapons. You will do it without American intelligence. You will do it without American special forces doing anything. No training, no nothing. We're withdrawing all of it, and you will now be left to your own demise. You will be responsible solely for what happens next, President Zelensky. That's what I would do, because that's the only thing that has a chance to end this. If Trump continues on and says, all right, fine, we'll unpause it, we'll keep going, that's going to achieve the opposite. Russia will still win. It won't change the outcome. It just will increase the price. But if the United States withdraws, and like if the Ukraine army collapses, or if they just quit fighting and then the war comes to a rapid end, then the killing is much smaller and it stops. So I think that's probably the best thing that the president can do right now, and the best thing for the Ukrainian people. And I suspect that there's a lot of Ukrainian people that are hoping just that. I know for sure, because I've talked to some in recent days, that a lot of them were very hopeful, especially before last Friday, that there would be a deal reached, that Trump would be able to end the war and their killing stopped. And I can only imagine the angst of those now, knowing the prospect of their leader not taking any of the diplomatic off-roads and instead saying he wants to see more warfare continue on, and they know it can't work. That's kind of the deal we have today. And I'd like to bring Gary back in, because he's always got some great ideas here. And our fans are really starting to want more of Gary too. So we're reading your comments, and we're giving you what you want here. So Gary, welcome back on this side of the camera. Always enjoy having you on here. And I just want to ask you your thoughts here. When you see Vance talking about how emphatic he's trying to do this, you saw because you played the Trump sound bites about how he wants to end, and then you keep seeing the stuff by Zelensky. What can be going through his head?
Well, Danny, that's kind of what I was going to throw that question to you. You just, the picture that you just painted over years, that is before anybody that is willing to look at it. The only thing I can assess is that Zelensky is drunk on the adulation that he gets from overseas, from the European Union. You and I have played the clips of him walking into standing ovations for minutes, or a long time.
Yeah.
And who would not be affected by that? My gosh, and it's repeated. These aren't one-time off happenings. We see it over and over again. Right after his slap down in the White House, what happened? He went over to 10 Downing Street, and we got the warm embrace from Starmer.
All the applause he gets, yeah.
Listen, we all know, when you get that kind of acceptance and again, adulation, how can it not seep into your consciousness and how you're going to react? And that's the only thing I think it explains this.
And okay, I get that from Zelensky's perspective. I mean, I get it. You just got humiliated in Washington, and you go to UK. But why? Help me understand this, because I genuinely don't get this. Why would UK not only bring him to 10 Downing, to all the cameras and stuff, but then set up a meeting with the king himself? What does UK benefit from that? I don't get it.
Well, I tell you, he's going on, to my eyes, Starmer is going on such a limb and proclaiming all this protection that he wants to provide, money and everything, boots on the ground. And pardon me, we're going to need your help to do this, America. Would you step in for us and back us up? Because we'd like to do all these wonderful things. It's like he wants to throw a party for Zelensky, but where's the beer? Where's the girls? And there's nothing there. So he can make all these promises, but my gosh, they're empty promises, Danny, right?
I mean, I think they are. I don't. It's like saying, listen, I want to buy a house in the Potomac area in Washington D.C. I know they run for about $2.4 million, and I only have about 60,000, but I really like it. So when can I move in? And the realtor actually entertaining you. That's the part I don't get, because this is not working in my brain. And I don't know, I'm hoping you can figure something out.
I have none of it figured out, Danny. That's why we're here, trying to figure this out together. And everybody out there in the audience, we're all trying to figure this out. Here's the other thing that strikes me, Danny, is that when Zelensky looks at that mineral deal and the protections that it's provide, he didn't see the protection and the security, the very security that he wanted, was provided in that deal. If we've got Americans, whatever, miners, businessmen over there working the land, what better security is he ever going to think he's going to get? Because NATO peacekeepers are not going to be allowed in there. Lavrov, Putin made that clear. Here he's got that guarantee that he wanted, and he didn't see it that way. That amazes me.
Yeah, I don't understand there. I want to go to our audience here. Popeye here says the sad and crazy thing is that those that are still supporting the war will raise Zelensky up as some martyr. Some people just don't get
Right.
it. This is about ending the war. And do you
Yes.
see that a lot? That like they almost seem like there's something noble about him and putting him up on a pedestal, but they seem oblivious to the cost of it to their people.
Danny, everybody loves an underdog, right? They just want to keep cheering on the underdog. He can do it. He can do it. Oh, just keep don't stop now. You know, you're at the 10-yard line. You know, you're so close, so close. You know, don't stop. And people in power are saying that. Not only people in the media, but he's surrounded by that. That's what I'm saying. I think he's believing all of that what he's hearing from the side he wants to hear, like his better angel, or what he thinks is his better angel, telling him press on. We've got liberty and what he calls democracy. Come on, what a joke! The democracy, we're going to provide it for our people. That's why I'm here. That's why I won't stop. We just saw it in the clip that we played. He says, we can't lose. And listen, he says, he goes, yeah, if America leaves us alone, well, oh boy, it's going to be tough. And it's going to be tough. How
But
about
we're going to keep
impossible?
doing it.
Right. He says, because we can't lose. Well, knock, knock. Kind of already lost,
Yeah,
Buster.
we're already doing it. Yeah. Here's an interesting thought here. It says what Starmer really did was put the blame of the loss in the Ukraine squarely onto Trump. What do you think about that? Because I know a lot of people are saying things like that. Like the reason why the Europeans are doing this is because they want Trump to be blamed. Do you think there's anything to that?
Oh, very much so. Listen, anything that can put him down, Trump, put him in his place, knock that loudmouth down, shut him up. What is he? He's just some, former TV star, and he happens to be president for the second time. Let's expose
Wait a minute.
this.
Isn't that the deal for Zelensky? He's the TV star too. I mean, which one, man? Yeah, they got to be careful with those analogies.
And listen, the Trump derangement syndrome. At any cost, get this guy off the stage, get him out of office. He's an embarrassment to America.
Yeah, and so here's another view. Now, this is somebody on the other side of this. Oh no, please! There is a huge ring of corruption. Don't fall for some emotional tie to Zelensky or his plot. We saw when I was on Tucker Carlson last month. That was one of the things he talked about. This all this huge corruption within the administration and in the diversion of a lot of these arms, which I guess is part of the corruption because they're selling them to God knows who. Going into reports of them going all over the world here. It doesn't seem like Trump's too keen on supporting that.
Thank God. Thank God the money flow is going to stop. And how dare he? Well, I guess, listen, he had to admit it, that he didn't know where the billions went. Oh, really? Really? Slight accounting error here? You keep coming and asking for more help, and you Zelensky, it can't stop. We need your help. Please, please, please. Oh, really? And you've been so responsible up until now? Is that how that works?
Here's something else. This is one I'm glad this person brought this up because this is something I personally have thought too and kind of have expected to see and hope that we do. We said Elon needs to audit the Ukrainian funds.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, my
Because
gosh.
that can actually quantify some of this stuff. It's one thing to be behind the scenes, but I mean, we sent Vincent there, so apparently we have some capacity to audit what we've given, don't you think?
Listen, I love that. I love that. Believe me, it rings so true. It makes my heart leap in my chest. However, listen, he's going to need a lot more than AI professionals and technicians. He's going to need some SEAL teams, I think, to go get to the bottom of that. You and I both know.
Right.
You think you can just walk into offices in Ukraine? Hey, can we look at your books, by the way? You have some accounting papers that we can go through? You kidding me? They better bring their guns with them if they're going to look for where that money ended up.
And relatedly, Congress wouldn't allow the Ukraine money to be
Exactly.
audited.
No kidding.
I mean, we got to be honest. I think some people know where some of this stuff has gone, and they're okay with it not being audited.
Danny, have you seen? I'm sure that our audience, I know, have seen the people out there that are resisting all the Doge accounting that they're trying to get their hands on, and saying, "Oh, what's this outsider? Elon Musk, and all he's doing is causing trouble." Oh, really? Because he's getting to the bottom of things and actually exposing things. And you see them, they gather together singing songs, making songs about how bad Elon is. It's amazing how revealing that is. That's what's most important to them, is that this outsider shouldn't be allowed to look at things, because we've got, we are who we are, and we've been accountable and responsible when they haven't been. So I love the work that he's doing. I would love to set him free on it, but like I said, I think he needs some snipers to go along with him.
I'm okay with putting. I bet Trump would provide that kind of support. And we have a show, by the way, at 1:00 this afternoon with Kurt Mills, the editor of the American Conservative magazine.
Yeah.
And he's going to be talking about that. Apparently, some of the Democrats objected to that, and that's kind of related to that last comment there about the what some people in Congress. And even before we get into that, we may get into this with Kurt later on. But I just kind of wanted your thought, Gary, as to. I think that there's something to it, that a lot of these people who have been reflexively, and you can add not Lindsey Graham. Well, you kind of could add Lindsey Graham into this, but Mitch McConnell, you can add him for sure into this, regardless of Democrat or Republican. I don't think they would want this kind of analysis done, because it would expose that all of this blanket support they've been given to the Ukraine side would be seen as being absurd. I mean, now you got the loss of the fuel, but then also if you find out that your money was going somewhere else, that would undercut their argument, don't you think?
Yeah, big time. Listen, you've seen how these lawmakers, on the salaries that they have, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, they've got $200,000, maybe $300,000 salaries, and yet they're multi-millionaires.
Yeah,
do you really give that many speeches? People really want to hear you talk that much in the speeches? Is that what rolls it in? What rolls all that money into their bank accounts? Multi-million-dollar, bank accounts they have, and none of them are accounting, because they can't. They're not accounting for it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Congress people who, started off and they were making, I think it was like $179,000 a year or whatever, and then all of a sudden 7 or 8 years later, their net worth is measured in the millions, and you're like, how did you get that? Well, investments. And I've always go, what investment returns like 200-300% on whatever you put in there? And I mean, I'd like an accounting on that too, if we could.
Oh, it's so obvious, Danny. It's so obvious, and hopefully by the time Doge gets down the road here a little bit more, that they'll be zeroing in and maybe really naming names and getting very specific. Here they're going after the different departments, so we're hearing the problematic agencies that are out there that have been just working their grift systems.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to go from there, from the agencies down to individuals, and I think we might be seeing that ultimately to explain, and they'll have to account for the work that they're doing. Well, you're doing all this accounting work, behind the scenes, and you've got your teams there. Well, what are you really coming up with, beyond that? And I think it's going to end up getting down into individual situations.
I hope that it does, because I know a lot of Americans would like to see a lot of that stuff exposed, even on our own side, not just on the Ukraine side.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, listen, both sides. Well, that's the other thing, Danny. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It is a deep state thing.
It is.
It is
It really
embedded people that have been there for years and know how the system works. They know how to work the system to their advantage, not to the American people's advantage, to their advantage, and they're very pleased and happy to continue doing that. So don't stop the game. Not here, not now.
Indeed. I'm definitely all for that.
Listen,
just to kind of remind you here, like I said, again, we will, the next show will be Kurt Mills. We'll be looking at a different aspect of this. Definitely want to tune in there, because he's got some really, really interesting things to say. Lots of contacts up on the Hill. He's been around for a long time and has some really good views on some things. And then also, I'll just let you know, coming up later this week, I'll probably have a big announcement to make. I can't say anything more at the moment, but just want to kind of tease that out, because some changes are coming on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive that you'll find very interesting. But we'll save that for another day, but something's coming.
Amen. Great day.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
And appreciate you, Gary.
We'll see everybody at the 1:00 for Kurt Mills.
See you then.